Hello, my name is Sydney. You might remember me from my other channel where I talk about political stuff and yell at clouds. And last Sunday, along with everybody else, I watched episode 3 of The Last of Us show on HBO. And I seem to hold what appears to be an unpopular opinion when it comes to the way that all of that went down. Which is fine, I don't mind. I mean, everybody is hailing it as the greatest piece of television in however many years, and I'm over here like, did our eyeballs watch the same thing? Are you on drugs? Am I on drugs? Anyway, when HBO announced that they would be making a Last of Us adaptation, I was excited and I was also nervous. Excited because the IP is honestly excellent and very well executed. Last of Us Part 1, just to be clear, because the second part is just narratively, the first game is insanely good, and I am probably no different to everybody else, but it did get me a little in the feels a couple times. And of course, I have to add that The Last of Us Part 2 was a complete disaster. Yes, there were improvements to gameplay and graphics, but these things were completely overshadowed by terrible narrative decisions. I will never understand why anyone thought it was a good idea to brutally kill the main character of the first game so early on in the story, and then force users to play as his murderer for over half the game. Not to mention, Shrek here is a very unlikable character. All that said, my nervousness towards The Last of Us show started because of the general direction modern television often goes. You know, the Netflix disease. Visually attractive shows that are ultimately unwatchable due to their levels of woke propaganda and forgettable storylines. HBO, as we all well know, has been a culprit of this. We all saw what they did to Watchmen. Much to my surprise, the first 2 episodes of Last of Us were actually pretty good. The global warming will cause the zombie apocalypse bit in the prologue was briefly concerning, but the show quickly recovered. I didn't even mind the race swapping of Sarah, whose actress might be a little too old for the role, but actually did a decent job. There have even been plot points added that work better for the show, like the fungal network, for example, rather than the spores from the original game. I've said this previously on my main channel, but I don't mind these sort of changes in adaptations because I think they give the show new and interesting story opportunities. Obviously, not all of them work. Every single time we have seen a lot of failures over the years. And also, I think something worth noting is that when you go from one medium to another, sometimes changes do have to be made in order for the storyline to continue to make sense. So, for example, I think something that worked in this regard was the scene of Tess sacrificing herself to stop the infected horde that found her through the fungal network, rather than just getting gunned down by Fedra soldiers. Personally, I think that the casting choice for Ellie leaves a lot to be desired, and maybe this is because I'm a negative Nancy, but I do think that she's just going to get worse and worse as the show goes on, but I do hope to be wrong, although my spidey senses, they tingle. Ellie in the game was tough, inquisitive, and protective. She had a great personality and a great sense of humor that brought a lightheartedness, so to speak, and I guess hope, to a very dark and depressing environment. But Ellie in the show is not that. We're supposed to feel supportive for this child, but all of that is undone because in a lot of ways, her behavior is very, very creepy. She's creepy while watching Joel beat a soldier to death, and she's especially creepy while cutting an infected man's forehead open just to watch him bleed. Gives me the heebie-jeebies. Rather than giving us someone to root for, as you'd expect with a main character, we get psychopath vibes. And just let me be nitpicky here for 1 second, but she's not even a redhead. You know, like that group of people that Hollywood is erasing? Yeah. She isn't that. Anyway, even after all of this, I was still really looking forward to where they were going to take the Bill portion of the storyline. Because, for those who've played the game, this is actually some of the most fun and exciting and intense gameplay in the whole of the game. But television show Bill is why I have trust issues. And what was done to him, this part of the game, and this storyline, in my opinion, is not okay. And it certainly wasn't the best television in the last few years, as everyone seems to think. I can't even compare them side by side because the show and the game are worlds apart in this respect. I think it's fair to say that on the first playthrough, plenty of people did not even notice that Bill was gay. Indications were subtle, not in your face, and they were honestly pretty easy to miss.
Well, let me tell you a story. Once upon a time, I had somebody that I cared about. It was a partner. Somebody I had to look after. And in this world, that sort of shit's good for one thing, getting you killed. So you know what I did? I wisened the fuck up. And I realized it's gotta be just me.
Either way, realizing that his character was gay wasn't even a big deal. It really only made the stuck together pages joke a little funnier.
Oh, why are these all stuck together?
In the game, Bill being same-sex attracted was a minor detail, and it certainly was not a focal point of the plot or his character. Gameplay-wise, Bill's main purpose is to teach you how to make nail bombs, which are super fun, I might add. He also gives you the much-needed shotgun, since aiming in the game is a pain in the behind, which coincidentally is the same thing Bill likes. Narratively as well, the scenes with Bill are some of the most intense in the entire game. I mean, your first introduction to him is seeing a clicker get destroyed by one of his traps. Soon after that, it's Joel who gets caught and you end up ensnared upside down. Then you have to shoot your way out while Ellie cuts down the counterweight. This part is also tons of fun, just by the way, unless you're like me and it just stresses you out and you end up screaming at the screen the whole time until Bill eventually comes and saves you with his machete. There's also some great banter between these three characters, especially Bill and Ellie.
Huh? Yeah, sure, Joel. Go ahead. Take my card. Take all my food, too, while you're at it.
By the looks of it, you could lose some of that food.
Listen to me, you little sh**.
So, why don't you fix one of these cars?
Oh my God, you're a genius. I mean, the whole time, why on earth hadn't I thought about fixing one of these cars?
Okay, don't be a dick.
Sadly, all of this was omitted from the episode because the Bill storyline is basically one big flashback. The game, on the other hand, managed to take the entirety of episode 3 and compress it down into a single monologue. And let's not forget that Bill in the game is a completely different person to Bill in the show. Game Bill can actually hold his own in combat, while show Bill stands in the middle of the street during a gunfight like a dum-dum and gets gut shot. Not very cash money for a super survivalist, if I do say so myself.
Survivalist.
Another crucial scene omitted from the show is the introduction of bloaters. These guys are by far the toughest enemies in the game, and you need Bill to help Joel to eventually kill them, because they're bullet sponge pains in the butt. Following that, it's only after Joel, Bill, and Ellie escape a group of infected and take refuge in an abandoned house that the character of Frank is even introduced, if you can call leaving a mean suicide note an introduction.
What, you know this guy or something?
Frank.
Who the hell's Frank?
He was my partner.
While exploring the house for resources, Joel comes across a note from Frank that essentially says he was tired of Bill's survivalist methods and Frank hated his guts and so he left. The game then gives you the option to give this note to Bill. The first time I played it, I kept it for myself because I felt bad for him, but on the second time, I did give it to him mostly out of curiosity. I wanted to see if he'd have a breakdown and cry. None of that happened, all we got was a, well, fuck you too.
Bill, I found this in there and I figured you should have it.
So that's how you feel. Well, fuck you too, Frank. Fucking idiot.
You know, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm not entirely sure that Game Joel knew that Bill was gay either.
Look, Bill, about your buddy back there, that's a tough deal.
Because, you know, when there's a zombie apocalypse, I'm not so sure that one's sexual orientation actually matters all that much. What does matter, on the other hand, is a well-trained trigger finger and a talent for survival.
Survivalist.
But HBO seems to feel differently. Show Bill starts off pretty strong. We get a cool montage of Bill setting up traps. We see the infected getting his head blown off by one of those traps, and that definitely did the traps in the game justice. But modern television gonna modern television, and things went downhill very quickly from here. Bill finds Frank in a hole. Honestly, I would have preferred him to have been Buffalo Bill after watching this whole episode, but he rescues Frank and makes him a nice lunch of rabbit and veg, as you do. So much of this scene honestly feels just like totally absurd, by the way, especially the comment about pairing rabbit with a Beaujolais. Like, neither of these people know what that is. Something about this interaction apparently signals to Frank that Bill is gay, and Frank starts making moves. Because again, like, yeah, that's 1000% what you're gonna be doing in a post-apocalyptic environment. Like, this escalates to playing piano and singing. then making out, then getting naked and doing the devil's tango. At this stage, it was pretty clear that Game Bill was not going to be showing up in this episode. Game Bill would not have been standing in the middle of the street during a gunfight with no cover and subsequently getting shot. Actually, Bill from the game probably wouldn't have much liked Bill from the show. Probably my favorite part of all of this was when Frank grabbed probably the smallest caliber gun they owned to go help Bill while he was being shot at in the street, when they literally had a basement with a wall of much better weapons.
There's a wall of them.
The storyline ultimately concludes with Frank getting older and sicker and deciding to end his own life with Bill by his side, instead of leaving him like Frank actually does in the game. I guess my overall takeaway from this was that there was no need for episode 3 to play out like this, besides political messaging. And honestly, nobody can change my mind about that. Yes, the acting in the episode was good. Yes, it's great that it made some people feel emotional, but ultimately, for me, I think the writing is where all of this fell apart. And again, if you're going to put so much effort into episodes 1 and 2 with making the adaptation true to the game, why does it change just because 2 characters happen to be gay? Like, why is that where the line is on where things diverge? The show creators sacrificed so many memorable and awesome moments from this part of the game in order to tell a completely fabricated gay love story with a completely fabricated happy ending. Like, why? What was the purpose of this? True fans of the game, who might not even be the target audience of this point, who knows, would have probably preferred to watch Joel fight his way out of a snare trap, fight off clickers, be saved by Bill, and find Frank's note than what we were actually given. It would have been more enjoyable to watch Joel blow up clickers with nail bombs instead of watch him at a tea party. More enjoyable to see Bill, Joel, and Ellie take down a bloater or see actual banter between all 3 of them. Beautiful moments can and do exist in shows, and this one is obviously no exception. But what makes a moment meaningful, in my opinion, is when it's fleeting, or when it's done in such a way that it's subtle and it's not shoved in your face. Having a post-apocalyptic show where you sacrifice action and intensity and suspense just so that you can have a random off-track episode for characters who are not integral, who don't play a huge part, is really bizarre. Episodes 1 and 2 were overall really well received, and there's a couple reasons for that. One was a shot by shot. They also follow the story, but they also have integrated plot devices that further the story, that make things better, that improve upon it. Episode 3 for me, and for I know a lot of other people, even though this is apparently the unpopular opinion, is where things have gone awry. The future of this show really depends upon whether or not the show creators want awards or if they want fan service. And unfortunately, as modern media dictates and keeps telling us, it really seems like these 2 things are mutually exclusive. Do they want award bait like episode 3, or do they want an awesome shot by shot like episode 1? The success of this series, unfortunately, entirely depends upon what the show creators chose. And beyond that, obviously, the game, in my opinion, is just way more enjoyable to play, at least in relation to the Bill storyline. It's just cool. There's so many cool things that happen. And it has been very challenging for me, given my irrational fear of zombies. So there is that. Anyway, guys, that is all for this video. Leave me your thoughts in the comments, and I will see you guys in the next one.